The main character lived in an endless circle: work, home, sleep. Every day was the same, without any joy. He wanted to break free from this gray world, see nature, breathe fresh air, and feel life. And then he decided he would go on a hike, so he thought. But he could not even imagine that the dream would come true literally. For a moment, everything changed. Now he was in completely different clothes, kindling a fire in the wild, cooking food in a cauldron, like a real traveler. The hero looked at the kettle in his hands and could not understand how it happened. Nearby, the flames crackled. The tent stood ready for the night, and he smelled smoke and food cooking on the fire. His wish had come true, though in a completely incomprehensible way. His name was Machita Akito. 24 years old, an ordinary office worker. He was riding the train, yawning loudly, barely standing on his feet from exhaustion. His face spoke for itself. Fatigue had become a usual state. For 33 days he worked without rest. And today, for the first time in a long while, he caught himself thinking that he didn't understand how he had endured it at all. He sat in the carriage, feeling that he had no strength left, and his consciousness was slowly fading. Every day the boss shouted at him, shifting all the duties onto Akito's shoulders because the colleagues were sick. But now this marathon is over. Tomorrow, for the first time in a month, is a day off. And he promised himself that this time he would really rest. One thought kept spinning in his head. How wonderful it would be to escape the city noise, forget the office and the gray routine. He felt that nature was the best medicine for fatigue. That was when the idea of a small trip to the mountains was born. While his thoughts were tangled, the train rattled its wheels, and the boy sat engulfed in drowsiness. A briefcase lay on his lap, his suit slightly wrinkled, his eyes closing on their own. He decided to just rest for a few minutes, but drowsiness held him for a long time. He woke up suddenly, hearing strange sounds around. The surroundings looked unfamiliar, and darkness reigned outside the window. He did not understand whether he had really reached the final station, and where he was at all. There was not a single soul on the platform. Darkness enveloped everything around, and the lanterns barely flickered. Akito clenched his briefcase and asked aloud what kind of place this was. He felt eerie from his own voice echoing through the station. Raising his eyes, he saw a sign with the inscription, Zaraki. This word meant nothing to him. He had never heard of such a station, and began to suspect that he might have ended up somewhere completely different from where he was supposed to be. Approaching the turnstiles, he noticed that there were no workers here at all, no attendant, no guard. It was as if the entire station had been abandoned. He even felt that this place was not serviced by people at all. But this is impossible, he thought. Deserted stations only exist in big cities, and here everything looked too old. He took out his phone to check the location, but there was no signal at all. Confused, he decided to go outside. The phone flashlight illuminated the road ahead of his feet, and complete silence prevailed around. No schedule, no signs, only a dark street. He walked carefully to avoid tripping over the stones. Almost 2 hours of wandering passed. Finally, he fell to the ground, exhausted and powerless. The cold pierced through his clothes, and one thought spun in his head. He was completely lost. Panic was growing with every minute. He was spinning around, trying to understand what was happening. Everything seemed too real, but at the same time unreal, as if the world had shifted somewhere aside. Suddenly he noticed a tunnel. Somewhere far away, at the very end, a faint glimmer of light was visible. His heart began to beat faster. Maybe this was the exit. He hesitated for a few seconds, then decided to check. If there really was an exit, he had to go. Gathering the last of his strength, the boy moved forward, toward where the light was breaking through. Walking through the tunnel, he shone his phone to see at least something. The ceiling was damp, the air was moist, and the footsteps echoed with a strange hum. And suddenly, the sound of waves reached his ears. The heart began to beat even faster. He quickened his pace, then started running altogether. When he emerged from the darkness into the light, a view of the sea unfolded before him. His eyes could not believe what they saw. Akito froze, eyes wide open. His jaw dropped involuntarily. Before him, the sea truly splashed, shining under the sun. He could not believe that just a few minutes ago he had been at the night station. Carefully approaching the edge of the cliff, he looked down. The sea waves crashed against the rocks, foam rising up. Is this really the sea? He thought. And how did it happen that night turned into day? Then he looked at himself and froze. His business suit was gone, replaced by simple hiking clothes. Everything looked too real. Fear and surprise were frozen on his face. Looking back, he saw that the tunnel he had just come out of had disappeared. In its place, there was now only a rock. It was too strange, even for a dream. To check if he was not asleep, he pinched himself. Pain pierced his body, but consciousness did not fade. So, this is not a dream. His heart beat even faster, and the cold wind from the sea made him shiver. Standing on the edge, he raised his head to the sky. The sun shone too brightly. The sea roared beneath his feet. And then he realized that he was truly in another place. The dream of nature had come true, but not at all as he had wanted. Suddenly, a voice sounded from behind. The boy turned sharply. His heart leapt to his throat. The first thing he saw was something pink. The moment seemed like an eternity. He thought it was some strange object, but in front of him stood a girl. Young, with 2 twisted ponytails, in a cute dress that barely fluttered in the wind. She looked as if from another world, and he did not understand how someone like that could appear here. He looked at her and froze. She was incredibly beautiful. Her eyes shone with curiosity, and her gaze was direct and clear. She silently examined him, and this moment seemed unreal to him. Finally, the girl quietly spoke, asking if he was all right. Her voice trembled. She almost stammered, as if she herself was scared. Akito could not utter a word. He was too shocked that she was even talking to him. The main character instantly bowed to the girl, apologizing for his behavior. He explained that he got lost and panicked a little. In his thoughts, it even occurred to him that maybe this girl was just cosplaying someone from a fantasy world, but the girl just smiled and said that nothing terrible had happened. It happens. The boy asked in surprise what exactly she meant. She looked at him and asked if he did not remember how their ship had crashed. She had miraculously managed to survive, and now she was glad to have found another survivor. Hearing about the ship, the hero froze for a moment. A shipwreck sounded terrible and unreal. He could not believe that this girl had really survived something like that. She asked if he was not a local resident of this island. In response, he waved his hands, explaining that he got here through a tunnel. The girl was surprised and asked again what kind of tunnel it was and whether he had hit his head. Akito scratched the back of his head in confusion, not knowing how to explain to her everything that had happened. After that, she snapped out of it and became embarrassed. She apologized for not introducing herself until now. Her eyes widened, her cheeks flushed with a blush, and her palm covered her lips in shame. Then she solemnly straightened up and said that her name was Olivia Hufflepuff, the eldest daughter of Marquis Hufflepuff. Her voice sounded noble and confident. In response, Akito also said his name. Only then did he realize that she had truly called herself the daughter of the Marquis. He thought that maybe it was all just someone's role or a strange game. Olivia put her palm to her lips and said in surprise that she had never heard a name like Akito. She asked which country he was from, and the boy, hesitating a little, answered that he was from Japan. She apologized, explaining that she did not know where this place was. Akito waved his hand, as if to say it was no big deal, and asked if at least she understood where they were now. Olivia sadly replied that she herself did not know where this island was. She said that she was traveling from the royal capital to the kingdom of Langman to marry Prince Nisar. Listening to her, The boy understood that she was not joking. There was too much sincerity in her voice. The words about the marquise, the capital, another kingdom, and the prince sounded too realistic to be a fabrication. Olivia smiled gently and asked if he happened to be an adventurer. She added that their situation was difficult now, which made Akito wonder if he had actually ended up in another world. He raised his hands to his head, squeezing his temples. He had no scene with a god granting power, like in manga or isekai. Confused, he silently opened his mouth, trying to understand why this was happening to him. Olivia turned to him and calmly told him to calm down. Yes, they were on an unfamiliar island, but the main thing was that they were alive. She suggested looking for other survivors, and he agreed, apologizing for his panic. Then the girl asked about his profession and skills. The boy confusedly repeated her question, trying to understand if he even had any skills. And it was then that he finally realized he had entered another world. Olivia looked at him in surprise and asked if such things were not known in his country. She explained that her profession was a holy knight, and most of her skills were physical in nature. The hero listened to her attentively, then fixed his gaze on the girl. He wondered if such a refined beauty could really have physical skills, as she looked too delicate. Olivia showed that checking your status was very simple. You just needed to touch your forehead with 2 fingers. She did it herself and suggested he repeat after her. Akito pondered. If this was really another world, would he have a profession? He closed his eyes, repeated her movement, and mentally ordered the system to show his status. A light flashed before his eyes, and a small window with information appeared. He exclaimed in surprise, asking what it was. Then he saw his own data and the line, Profession. Tourist. Looking more closely, he noticed 5 skill points. He became curious whether they could be used to learn some abilities. He tried to understand the system. It seemed that each skill required a certain number of points. So, to become stronger, one had to learn gradually, raising levels. Then he shifted his gaze to the tab, Camping Item Exchange. He wondered if these points could be exchanged for camp items, a sleeping bag, grill, or cauldron. Another window appeared before him, an item storage. He realized that even here points were needed to obtain items. With such few points, he could afford nothing. Olivia addressed him by name, asking if he had already figured out his profession. Akito hesitated, wondering if she would think he was mocking her. Finally, he looked at her with anxiety in his eyes, and quietly said that it seemed his profession was tourist. His voice trembled betrayingly, and his heart pounded. Olivia covered her mouth with her palm in surprise, and asked if she had heard correctly. She had never heard of such a profession, and was sincerely interested in its meaning. The hero smiled awkwardly, and explained that tourism was traveling, resting in nature, making campfires, and cooking food. She listened, not understanding how such a profession could exist. The boy explained that during hikes one can admire the stars at night. Olivia responded with surprise that such an activity resembles rural amusements, but even listening about it is interesting. Akito thought that he himself had only seen stars on video. He laughed quietly, asking if it could even be called a profession. Compared to a holy knight, everything seemed too simple. However, Olivia smiled and told him not to belittle his own dignity. She said that she had heard about wise men who surpassed even noble knights in strength, then looked him straight in the eyes and confidently said that he too would definitely become an outstanding person. Akito's heart pounded wildly. He turned away to hide his blush. Her smile literally shattered him from the inside. A thought flashed through his mind whether he should try to flirt with her a little, but he immediately remembered that Olivia was engaged to the prince. This boundary must not be crossed. And at that very moment, she asked what skills he had. The boy became embarrassed and replied that he had not yet allocated the skill points. He apologized and promised to do it soon as he figured out the system. Olivia seriously said that the distribution of points affects life. One must be careful, as new points can only be obtained by leveling up. Her words sounded both as advice and as a warning. Akito pondered her words, recalling the information window he had seen earlier. He began to wonder whether the system really gives 4 points daily, or if it is just an initial advantage. At that moment, Olivia turned to him and asked if they would go look for other survivors. He agreed, thinking that perhaps the search itself would increase endurance or become a small cheat for leveling up. They had been walking for a long time but found no one. Akito suggested turning back, but the girl said she wanted to find at least someone today. However, the heat was unbearable, and they could simply become dehydrated. Akito thought that he could not allow Olivia to die of thirst. He said aloud that he would somehow get water, after which he opened his information menu to try to do something. The girl asked in a weak voice if he possessed water magic. He shook his head negatively, but explained that he had seen something interesting in his status window and wanted to try it. Calling up the menu, he carefully reviewed all the items and came across the section with objects. Among them, he found something resembling a canister of water and selected it. And at that very moment, a huge 20-liter canister of pure drinking water materialized next to them. Olivia froze in surprise, not understanding how this was possible. Akito approached her closer and showed how to unscrew the tap. He said that you only need to turn it, and water will flow. Olivia looked at him in amazement and said that this was an incredible ability. She smiled and thanked him, saying that she would accept this gift with gratitude. Akito replied that he was always happy to help. A quiet, slightly embarrassed pause settled between them. Suddenly, Olivia asked if he had a mug or a cup. The boy was confused. He had not thought about such small things at all. He was caught off guard by the everydayness in a magical situation. Akito closed his eyes, thinking that it was not worth spending points on the future for such things. There was not even a mug in the store, let alone food. Their situation was quite difficult. He turned to Olivia, apologized, and asked to drink directly from the canister. The girl agreed, smiling and saying that this would be her first such experience. She stepped closer, unscrewed the tap, and watched as the water flowed, her eyes filled with joy. She whispered that she could not believe that real drinking water was in front of her. Olivia greedily took several sips, but started coughing heavily out of habit. Akito rushed to her, asking anxiously if she was okay. There was genuine panic on his face. The girl blushed, and covering her mouth, asked him to forget that he had seen it. She was embarrassed by such behavior. Akito just smiled and said that he often forgot the rules himself, so there was no need to worry. Then he thought that if they had at least some small pot, they could cook something over the fire. This would help both to warm up and to restore strength. Later, Olivia calmed down. She looked at him with a smile and said that she had never guessed that he had the ability to create objects. Akito immediately explained that it was not quite so. He had simply exchanged points for water, but he was still far from true mastery. It was good that Olivia did not see how nervous he was. She exclaimed in surprise, asking if he really had the spatial ability to store items. Such people occur once in 30,000. This impressed her to the depths of her soul. The boy's face turned red. He anxiously asked again if it was really true. His heart was beating fast. He could not believe he possessed such a rare ability. Finally, he smiled and explained that the exchange system allows obtaining not only water, but also other camping items. Olivia raised her eyebrows in surprise as she listened to him. The hero continued that it was even possible to get food or equipment, but each exchange required points, which he now had almost none of. His voice sounded a little embarrassed. Olivia placed her hand on her chest and sincerely said that his ability as a tourist was truly amazing. She had never heard of anything like it, but genuine respect shone in her eyes. Akito thought that no one had praised him for a long time. Finding himself in a new world, powerless and incomprehensible, next to a noble girl, he felt anxiety for his future. It was difficult for him to realize that now everything around was reality, but suddenly determination awoke in him. He turned to Olivia and loudly proposed to overcome all difficulties together. Hearing this, the girl confidently nodded and agreed without any hesitation. With a smile on her face, she addressed him by name and asked if he could become her friend. The boy also smiled, agreeing, and told her to just call him Akito. Olivia was delighted by his words and extended her hand. The boy responded in kind, and their palms met. She sincerely wished him to take care of her, calling him by name, and he felt warm trust in her voice. The main character looked at the sky and noticed that the sun was already setting. He asked if it was worth staying here for the night. Olivia surveyed the area, as if assessing whether this place was suitable for an overnight stay. Akito thought that for such a noble lady, a night under the open sky would be uncomfortable. But before he could suggest anything, the girl excitedly said that she was trembling with excitement, like a child before an adventure. He realized that she was full of enthusiasm, so he said aloud that they needed to gather branches for the bonfire. Olivia asked again, then cheerfully said to rely on her, and ran to the forest. While he was gathering thin branches, the girl returned holding a small tree trunk in her hands. She proudly asked what he thought about it, expecting approval. Akito replied confusedly that it was too large a log, more suitable for building a house than for a fire. It was difficult for him to explain that such wood would not be suitable at all. Then he explained that if the log was not shortened, it would be almost impossible to set it on fire. He showed with his hand how long the firewood needed to be. Olivia looked at him carefully, trying to understand. Suddenly her face blossomed with a smile. Her eyes narrowed with joy, and she said with a cheerful exclamation that she understood everything. With the same smile, the girl took the deck and began chopping it with her bare hand. Akito froze, watching as she calmly sliced through the wood with her bare hands. It looked incredible. Noticing his surprise, Olivia calmly explained that it was a common basic skill of a holy knight, the ability to chop wood. For her, it was something ordinary. Akito looked at her with a puzzled smile and thought that this girl was truly strange. He wondered if all noble ladies in this world were so unusual. Although he could not deny her strength, he took a few steps on the ground when suddenly he heard a loud noise from behind the bushes. The boy immediately froze, listening, his heart beating faster. In a few seconds, a monster appeared before them. He froze in horror, not understanding what it was. Olivia calmly said it was a demonic rat. Akito asked fearfully if she was joking. She warned him to be careful. Although it is a low-level creature, its bite takes a very long time to heal. Then she took a stick and began to talk about demonic beings. Her eyes flashed with determination. She shouted for the monster to return to the world of the dead. At that moment, Akito thought he saw the true power of the Holy Knight. The next second, Olivia rushed forward, and with several strikes of the stick, destroyed the monster. Everything happened so fast that the boy didn't even have time to react. He just stood stunned. He looked at her and thought that maybe the real monster was her. Olivia politely bowed, apologizing. Akito asked in surprise why she was apologizing, since she had just saved his life. The girl explained sadly that she was not yet very skilled in physical attacks, which made her strikes too destructive. He decided to encourage her by saying that it was all right. At least there would definitely be firewood now. She looked at him in surprise, not understanding what he meant. Then the boy smiled and explained that small branches and twigs were just what the fire needed, and her strength handled it perfectly. Olivia laughed, praised him for his wit, and said she expected this from a true tourist. Then she added that the difference between him and a holy knight was huge. Akito thought that the knight still looked cooler. He raised his eyes to the sky and thought that if monsters lived here, then this was a true world of swords and magic. He urgently needed to obtain at least some kind of weapon for self-defense. When they finished gathering firewood and built a small fire, Akito remembered he only had 3 balls. However, fire was necessary. He quietly asked the system to give him something to help ignite the flame. Opening the information window, he found the needed item and spent 1 point. A small lighter worth 100 yen appeared in his hands. He had 2 points left. The boy showed her how this thing works and explained that it is a device for making fire. Olivia, enchanted, called it a magical artifact. He asked her to make a few more sticks, and she immediately got to work. In a few minutes, with joint efforts, they lit a fire. Olivia happily exclaimed that they succeeded, and the tongues of flame cheerfully danced between them. Akito laughed, saying he did not even expect such success. He smiled broadly, his face glowing with happiness. Warmth of satisfaction spread inside. He had managed to create something with his own hands. Pride and relief filled his soul. At some point, he noticed that they had been holding hands all this time. Olivia pulled her hand away in fear and whispered that it was unacceptable since she was engaged to Prince Nisar. Akito apologized, explaining that he was just too happy. They sat next to each other on a fallen log, and Akito caught himself wondering why he was so nervous. But then he sighed and decided it didn't matter. Night had fallen on the forest. He opened the status menu to check his abilities. The boy thought that if they spent the night right here, monsters might appear again. But he couldn't ask Olivia to stand guard all night. That would be too cruel. His stomach painfully reminded him that they hadn't eaten anything yet. Akito realized he needed to figure out how to ensure both safety and food with only 2 points. He felt powerless, but was not going to give up. At that moment, he looked at the girl. Her face was shining. She seemed calm and happy. Suddenly, she called his name, and there was something warm in her voice. Olivia turned to him with a smile and said that today had been fun, and it was all thanks to him. Akito did not expect such words and was momentarily confused. He thought that so many incredible things had happened in one day that would seem impossible in modern Japan. He could hardly believe that all this was happening to him. Thoughts in his head were tangled, interrupting each other. He sat looking at the fire calmly smoldering before him and quietly said that he also enjoyed this day. Akito smiled broadly. His eyes narrowed with genuine joy. He repeated that he was really having fun. They looked at each other, smiling warmly and friendly. Then he thought that they needed to take care of their safety. Among the available items, he found something useful and said aloud that it should help. He decided to create at least a week-long protective barrier. The boy activated the skill, Blessing of the Base Camp, placed his hand on the ground, and chose this place as the camp. At that moment, he fully realized he was truly in another world, and since it had already happened, he decided to use the new opportunities to the fullest, enjoying every moment. Standing up, he smiled and announced that everything was ready. Olivia approached and asked if they should look for water and food tomorrow. The boy nodded, replying that that was exactly what he planned to do. Suddenly, realization struck again. He, an ordinary office worker, had ended up on a mysterious island, possibly uninhabited, and his profession was a tourist. It sounded strange, but it was supposed to help him survive. He was drawn again to thoughts about food. They had been walking all day without eating anything, and only now did he feel true hunger. After all the shocks, it had simply slipped his mind. He decided that tomorrow, when he could get new glasses, he would immediately deal with the food problem. Probably Olivia was hungry too. His gaze involuntarily slid toward her side. The girl quietly asked if he didn't think the fire was getting weaker and the glow of the magic circle was fading. Akito agreed. She added that if the flame went out, complete darkness would reign around, and fear was audible in her voice. Looking closely at her, he noticed that Olivia was trembling. Her shoulders barely moved. She was truly afraid of the dark, and that seemed very human to him. He thought that in such a gloomy forest, anyone would be scared. So he fully understood her. He tried to call her by name, but at first she did not respond. When she turned to him, he smiled gently and said that everything was fine. Then he suggested they blow the fire together. The girl looked at him, and her cheeks instantly flushed. The boy explained that to restore the flame, one needed to add thin branches and blow lightly. He began to show how it was done. Olivia listened attentively and nodded. Following his instructions, she took several twigs and threw them into the dying flame. In a moment, it flared up stronger, playing with bright reflections. The girl looked at the revived fire in surprise. She exclaimed joyfully that the flame had really flared up. Akito smiled and replied that everything had turned out wonderfully. After that, Olivia said that he was incredible, as befits a tourist. She asked if the fire would get even bigger. The boy nodded and explained that it was only necessary to add more branches. Olivia smiled and did just that, saying that she would not lose even to the sparkling fire. Watching her happy face, Akito felt calm. Now he was sure the flame would burn all night. He looked at her and said that she was probably tired, so it was better to rest. In response, the girl awkwardly said that she was the fiancée of Prince Nisar, but due to circumstances, she would have to sleep nearby today. Her voice mixed confusion and determination. She added that if anything happens, she will have to use the hyper-auror cat technique. Her gaze became cold and serious, causing the boy to shudder. Akito thought that Lady Olivia had a wonderful figure and was very sweet. For a moment, the thought flashed through his mind that it would be wonderful if she became his girlfriend, but it was impossible. His face flushed red. He began to feverishly assure that he had not thought about anything like that at all, and asked her to believe him. Olivia closed her eyes, apologized for her suspicions, and said she had thought badly of him, calling herself a terrible person. Akito reassured her, assuring that everything was fine, and there was nothing to worry about. The girl with a light smile said that she was now calm because, as expected, he was a decent person. For Akito, these words were both pleasant and somewhat painful, like a joke that hit right in the heart. Then he thought that sleeping on the hard ground would be uncomfortable, so he decided to lay down some grass to make it softer. Olivia supported the idea and thanked him, calling him a true gentleman. When they prepared a place to sleep, they lay down next to each other and sank into silence. Suddenly, Akito heard a quiet laugh. Turning around, he asked what had happened. She smiled and asked, "Doesn't it seem strange?" With a light smile, Olivia said that spending the night without dinner and a bath is even daring, and it takes your breath away. Her words sounded cheerful, like a playful confession. She added that it was the first time she had such a free night. The stars shine brightly, and the sky today is simply magical. Akito was surprised by her words, because he had never heard a noble girl rejoice in such little things. He looked up and thought that she was right. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly free, without worries, without work, without demands. This night was like a gift. His eyes widened. The sky above was covered with millions of stars twinkling over the forest. This landscape was enchanting, and Akito could not look away. He thought that the moment when one can just lie down and look at the sky is a true luxury. Smiling, he enjoyed the peace and felt all worries melt away. A new day had come. The sun shone brightly, its rays gently touching the skin. Akito woke up, rubbed his face, and yawned. Nearby, Olivia was still peacefully sleeping, slightly nestled into the grass. The boy stretched, closed his eyes, and smiled. He liked waking up in the fresh air. The sun was warm, and the breeze brought the scent of the sea. It was the feeling of real life. Then he decided to first check his status. He spoke the command, and a familiar information window immediately appeared before his eyes. Carefully reviewing the data, he noticed that he had received 4 new points. His natural ability really gave a daily bonus. Akito was delighted by this discovery. He thought it was great. But for now, it was not worth spending points on new skills. Maybe later, when Olivia woke up, it would be worth trying his luck in the food system. Then he checked the canister with water. Opening the lid, Akito was surprised. The canister was full of clean water. He did not expect this. At that moment, a sleepy voice behind him said his name. Olivia woke up, rubbed her eyes, and wished him good morning. She said it had become a little brighter around. Her hair freely fell on her shoulders, creating a gentle image. The boy looked at her and blushed. He nodded and wished her good morning in return. In his thoughts, he noted that today she did not have her usual drill curls, and that made her even cuter. The girl shyly asked him not to look so intently because she had not yet freshened up. He immediately apologized and assured her that she looked wonderful. Then he said he would turn away and check his status. Akito added that the canister was full and she could use the water. She thanked him, and he suggested having breakfast afterward. He promised to get something tasty for them. The boy wondered if he could learn the skill, Camp Blessing, and then master the ability Camp Dish. This could help in cooking food. In his imagination, frying pans, appetizing dishes, and steaming plates already appeared. He imagined cooking breakfast by the fire. The very thought made his mouth water. However, to acquire this skill, 3 points were needed. So for now, it was better to wait. First of all, he needed to look for some food nearby because they had gathered nothing yesterday. At that moment, a familiar voice sounded from behind. Olivia announced that she was ready. Akito immediately turned to her. With a confident smile, she apologized for the wait. Her hair was neatly gathered in her usual hairstyle. The boy could not help but be surprised at how quickly she had gotten ready. Looking at her, he thought that the same confident and charming Olivia was standing before him again. It seemed to him that she really liked him. At that moment, her stomach loudly rumbled. She immediately turned away, blushed, and apologized for being so hungry. Akito laughed and said he heard nothing but was barely holding on himself. So he decided to find them some food. He thought it would be great to get something ready to eat. He opened the status menu and decided to use the Food Gotcha function. Looking at the selection window, he thought the main thing was not to get something that needed cooking. His finger moved closer to the confirmation button. He spent 1 point, leaving 3 for himself. Right before them, a package of groceries materialized. Both leaned in with curiosity to see what had appeared. Inside were 2 items. Akito recognized them immediately and exclaimed that these were onigiri from the store. He could not believe the system had given something so familiar. Olivia silently looked at the strange white food, not understanding what it was. Akito held the onigiri in his hands and said it looked very appetizing. The girl hesitantly asked if it was really edible. The girl asked if she should just bite off a piece since they had neither knives nor forks. The boy asked her to wait, then showed her how to properly open the wrapper, his movements careful, as if it were a real ritual. After that, he handed her the onigiri. Olivia raised it to her face, inhaled the aroma, and said with surprise that it smelled very appetizing. The next moment, they wished each other a good meal. They simultaneously bit into their first piece. The rice was soft and the filling tender. Swallowing, both smiled and said it was extraordinarily delicious. Akito thought this was the first proper meal in a long time. Who would have thought that a simple onigiri could be so delicious? Olivia said it had an amazing taste. The boy was glad she liked the tuna and mayonnaise filling. He thanked for the food, but admitted to himself that one was not enough. However, he was reluctant to spend points, until suddenly the girl said she would like more, and he realized she truly enjoyed it. Then the boy stood up, saying it was time to get to work. Olivia agreed, but at that moment the fire beside them began to die out. They decided to head to the coast. Later, they reached the shore, where they again made a small fire. Akito suggested making a signal torch. Olivia asked what he meant. He explained that if a ship passed by, they might be noticed. Hearing this, the girl clapped her hands joyfully and said it was a wonderful idea. The boy added that today they must find people, replenish water and food supplies, and if all goes well, explore the interior of the island. He spoke confidently, like the captain of the expedition. He said there was still some water left in the canister, but not enough for washing or bathing. Olivia asked in surprise, admitting that she had never done it before, although she understood that it was necessary. Akito thought it would be good to find a river. He hadn't washed for 2 days and began to worry if he smelled. This thought made him feel awkward. They set off deeper into the forest. Unlike yesterday's path, this one was much more difficult. Branches obstructed the way. He regretted not having a machete when suddenly Olivia stopped him, saying she could manage on her own. She raised her hand, and light flashed around. Using the power of the holy night, Olivia cleared the way in seconds, destroying all obstacles ahead. Impressed by what he saw, Akito exclaimed that it was incredible. He wondered where she got such strength. The girl just smiled and said that every true lady must possess such skills. The boy looked at her with surprise and admitted that the skills of the local ladies were simply amazing. Olivia cheerfully pointed forward and suggested continuing the search in that direction. They walked for a long time, overcoming thickets. Akito said he found nothing, and at that moment asked if she heard the sound of water somewhere. The girl listened carefully and said she heard some noise. Then she reported that she would now use the hearing enhancement skill. After a few seconds, she confidently stated that she heard the babbling of water nearby. The boy was surprised and asked if it was really true. Olivia nodded and said they needed to go there. They moved toward the sound, but instead of a large river, they saw only a narrow stream. There was little water, and it was almost useless. Both looked disappointed. Olivia covered her face with her hands, saying sadly that it was simply a disgrace. Akito encouraged her, saying that everything was still ahead. Perhaps the stream would widen and turn into a real river. He suggested moving along the stream to check, asking Olivia to be careful as the vegetation was becoming denser. Akito felt that the further they went, the more anxious he became. The forest seemed too quiet to him, as if at any moment someone could jump out of the bushes. Yesterday's monster was weak, but that did not mean the others were the same. He looked back and told the girl to be alert, for they do not know what lies ahead. Olivia nodded seriously, agreeing with him. They walked forward for a long time, overcoming slopes and logs, and suddenly Akito noticed something strange ahead. Between the trees were traces of cut trunks, and on the ground remained even stumps. This meant that someone with tools had worked here. So, there are still people on the island. Then he looked to the left and saw a river, partially blocked by fallen trees. At that moment, Olivia shouted for him to look where she was pointing. She said that there was an open space ahead. He confirmed that he saw the same. And at that moment, both noticed something unusual. Right in front of them, among tall mushrooms, stood tiny houses. They looked like something out of a fairy tale. Olivia said that these were probably homes of magical creatures. Akito replied that they were too small for humans. The girl suggested that they might be forest gnomes, which she had read about in books. Then Akito wondered if they were responsible for those cut trees. He tensely surveyed the area and thought that now he had to be as careful as possible. But suddenly, he heard someone come out of one of the houses. He immediately shouted Lady Olivia's name, warning her. At that moment, the door of one house opened, and a cat appeared on the threshold. It loudly shouted, asking who they were. Akito froze, not believing his eyes. He thought about how to understand this. Could it really be a talking cat? They stood facing each other. Akito tensely stared at it, not understanding whether it was a living creature or a monster that could take the form of an animal. Looking more closely, the boy saw that the cat really looked like an ordinary one, except for small differences. Meanwhile, it began to speak about rare animals, and Akito was surprised, because these words seemed to belong to him. Suddenly, another voice was heard behind them, addressing the cat by name, Tama, ordering him to calm down. Another cat came out of the neighboring house, explaining that there were people in front of them. Tama asked his brother with surprise if these were really people. Akito only widened his eyes. It turned out there were several of them here. He decided that if these creatures could speak, then it was possible to find common ground with them. So he smiled kindly, raised his hand, and said that they were indeed people who had come from overseas. The cat, who called himself Tom, smiled in response and confirmed that they had not seen people for a long time. The traders who occasionally visited here had smooth faces, like theirs. Akito asked in surprise which traders they were talking about. The cats explained that once every 2 months a ship sails here, and people exchange food and stones with them. The boy pondered. This meant that the island was not completely uninhabited, and the ship appeared regularly. Therefore, there was a chance for rescue. With a smile, he said that if the ship arrived again, they could ask to be taken away. Olivia rejoiced, adding that then they would definitely return to the kingdom's capital. The cats inquired whether they had also arrived to trade, since people usually bring delicious food. Their eyes shone with curiosity. The main character explained that they ended up here due to a shipwreck, and they were simply washed ashore. After that, Tama anxiously asked if they were really victims. The cats' faces immediately saddened. They said they understood everything, and that it was probably difficult. Their voices sounded with sincere sympathy. Akito thought that these creatures were very kind. Maybe they would even help. So he asked what the name of this island was. The answer was Marvel Island. One of the cats, named Uchi, said that sacred beasts from the Minions tribe lived here. Tom confirmed that they also belonged to this tribe. Akito asked again if they were really sacred creatures. The cats nodded and explained that all talking creatures on the island were such sacred beasts, protectors of nature. The boy asked if there were other people here. Butchie replied that the ship had sailed only a few days ago, and they had not met any victims of the shipwreck except them. Smiling, Akito thanked them for the information. In his thoughts, he noted that the ship had sailed recently, so they would have to wait a long time for the next one. The boy decided that while they were here, he needed to use all his tourist skills to survive. His face became serious. He no longer intended to rely solely on chance. Then he asked where they could get food. The cats replied that they exchange it for fish, fruits, and meat obtained in the forest, as well as for shiny stones found in caves. Akito became interested in the stones. Toma explained that people call it magical ore. From it, rare ingredients can be obtained. Butchie warned that dangerous monsters live in the cave, so one must enter carefully. There are almost none outside, but inside it is full of dangers. The boy nodded, remembering every word. Tama promised to show them a place where many fruits grow. Butchie added that they can be safely picked and eaten. Akito and Olivia thanked them, promising to be careful. Later, they were already walking back along the path shown by the cats. Akito said they were incredibly lucky to meet such friendly creatures. Olivia agreed, adding that the food issue was now resolved. The boy recalled the cat's words about the waterfall. There was a place where they could not only replenish their water supplies, but also bathe. If they went in the indicated direction, they would find it quickly. It was very close. Olivia closed her eyes and dreamily said that these cats were so cute and fluffy that she just wanted to hug them. Akito quietly replied that she said that out loud. He added that the ship had recently sailed, so they had no chance to leave for now. Olivia said sadly that she needed to somehow get home, otherwise her family would lose their reputation. The boy was surprised and asked if that was really such a problem. He explained that the accident happened because of a storm, for which she was not to blame. But Olivia replied that it was not so simple. Prince Nisar might decide that she had run away. She closed her eyes and whispered that she could not allow such a misunderstanding. It was clear that this thought worried her. Akito silently looked at her, feeling sincere concern. In his thoughts, he asked himself if Lady Olivia really wanted to return to the prince. Then suddenly he heard some noise and immediately warned the girl. A few minutes later, they approached the water. Olivia and Akito stood before the majestic waterfall, which fell with a roar into the clear lagoon. They excitedly talked about the discovery, the very same blue waterfall that Butchie had told about. Its size was impressive. The boy said that the place was incredibly beautiful, but he urgently needed to wash because his body and hair had long been asking for cleanliness. Olivia asked in surprise if he really intended to bathe here. He only replied, "Why not?" Then he added that if she wanted, she could go first. The girl's face instantly flushed. She began to stammer, and awkwardly said that swimming outdoors was something completely new for her. Akito thought that she was still hesitating. He smiled gently and said that in their situation cleanliness was more important than shame, because that way there was less chance of getting sick. Olivia, still blushing, quietly said she understood. but there were certain nuances that were awkward to talk about. Her voice sounded uncertain, yet her eyes shone with trust. Finally, she raised her head and said that she trusted him. Akito replied that everything was fine. He knew how strong she was, and that she needed to conserve her strength to return to the kingdom. Then Olivia sharply said that if he even caught a glimpse of her body, she would destroy him. Akito thought it was better not to argue and loudly said he wouldn't even look that way. The girl remembered that her mother told her, "Physical strength is no reason for pride." To this, the boy replied that she was right, and he meant nothing of the sort. Then Akito opened the information window, saying for her to wait a moment. He would come up with something now. He did not want her to feel uncomfortable. After reviewing the list, he bought a set of towels, toothbrushes, and razors, spending 1 point and leaving 2. It seemed like a trifle, but very necessary. The boy shared items with the girl, allowing her to use them. But she asked with surprise if a tourist can really receive any things. Akito replied that no, he can only retrieve items related to travel. Then he said he would go for the stones, and when she finishes, she should call him. Olivia thanked him, saying the towel would be very useful to her. Later, the girl took off her clothes and carefully entered the water. She quietly said that she never thought bathing in a natural waterfall could be so pleasant. Standing under the cold streams, Olivia closed her eyes and smiled. The water refreshed her skin, and she felt true relief. Meanwhile, Akito sat behind the rocks, waiting for her to finish. He closed his eyes and thought that she seemed to really like swimming. But then his imagination played a cruel trick on him. He tried to banish the thought that he was picturing her naked and told himself it was just from fatigue. After a while, Olivia called him, apologizing for the wait. She allowed him to bathe. The boy turned back and replied that he understood everything. When he saw her after bathing, her hair was straight, without the usual curls, and there was no trace of makeup on her face. She said that while he bathed, she would go hunting, which shocked him. Blushing, Akito replied that he understood. Then he pondered her words and asked again if she really intended to hunt. Olivia smiled and confidently confirmed. She explained that she felt uncomfortable constantly relying on him, so she decided to try her own strength, while she still had the energy and desire. Olivia added that he also did a lot and helped her. Therefore, now she wants to make her contribution. Confidence sounded in her voice. She clenched her fist and said seriously that tonight for dinner there would be fried meat, so he can confidently entrust her with hunting and fishing. Akito understood that arguing was pointless. He agreed, saying he relied on her. After bathing, he planned to return to the camp, gathering firewood on the way. That is where they would meet. Olivia smiled and wished him to take care of himself. Then she said goodbye and left. The boy thought that she was truly amazing, a noble lady, who also knows how to hunt. Then he approached closer to the waterfall, carefully laid his clothes on a stone, and stepped into the water. The cool streams flowed around his body, bringing a feeling of renewal. After some time, he sat on a stone right in the water, threw his head back, and whispered with pleasure that this was true bliss. At that moment, he heard a quiet rustling nearby. His heart quickened. He thought that maybe it was a beast, but not a monster. However, he was naked and unarmed, and he did not know how to fight. Olivia was not nearby, and that scared him. Recalling Butchie's words that outside the monster caves there are almost no monsters, he still decided to open the information window and prepare at least some kind of weapon. He only had 2 points left. For them, he could only exchange a short tourist knife. He knew that against even a weak monster, it would be useless. An axe or machete cost 5. He lacked points. Then he noticed movement in the bushes. He looked out and saw a tail, fluffy like a squirrel's. He exhaled with relief. It seemed to be just an animal, not a danger. He thought that if Olivia failed to find food, he would have to use the food gotcha again. But first, he needed to wash his clothes so as not to look completely wild even in this new world. The main character was drying his hair, Thinking about whether Olivia even knew how to wash clothes, he assumed that noble ladies hardly did such things. It was probably the servant's job. Her words about the family's reputation possibly being ruined surfaced in his memory. It meant a great deal to her. Akito did not quite understand how aristocratic life was arranged, but he saw that she was truly worried. Fully dressed, he thought that the girl was very kind and caring. She did not deserve to be amidst the chaos and danger of this island. Therefore, the boy firmly decided that until the ship arrived, he would do everything possible to at least somewhat dispel her anxiety. His gaze became resolute, full of determination. At that moment, Akito again pondered the ship, how they would return home if he did not even know where they were. This thought caused irritation and helplessness. He stood with his arms crossed, as if trying to stop his own worries. Then he decided it was better to focus on real matters. He needed to go to the place Tom told about, where fruits grow. At least that would give them a chance to survive. Akito decided that he needed to gather food and firewood before dark. He moved forward with a confident step, recalling the direction the cats had indicated. Stopping among the bushes, he realized that there should be a clearing with fruits nearby, and indeed, he came out to a small clearing in the forest, where a huge tree towered before him. Bright fruits were visible on its branches, right among the leaves. Looking closely, Akito realized that it was a mango juicy and ripe. It looked incredibly appetizing. The only problem was how to get it from such a height. The boy went around the trunk and realized there was no chance to climb. He was too fat and smooth, without any protrusions to grab onto. Then Akito turned his back to the tree and opened the information window to search for the necessary tool, but suddenly heard a dull thud behind him. He turned sharply. For a moment he thought it was a ghost of his imagination, but the sound repeated. The boy began to look more closely. 2 birds were sitting on the branch. They looked at him with curiosity. Akito involuntarily wondered who they were, ordinary creatures, or perhaps another strange beings of this world. One of the birds began flapping its wings, shouting, "Zico! Zico!" The sound was sharp and irritating. The boy frowned. It seemed he had heard such cries before. Then the bird raised its beak and shouted for him not to stare, and also asked if he understood the language. Akito froze, not believing what he heard. Could this bird really talk? Its voice was sharp and shrill, which made the boy twitch. 2 birds began to mock, asking if he wanted fruit and why he could not climb up himself. Then he realized they were sacred beings too. He felt uncomfortable from their tone. Then the birds brazenly began to snatch mangoes and eat them right before the boy's eyes, exclaiming how delicious it was. Akito stood below, clenching his fists in helplessness. He decided to act with politeness. Smiling, he raised his head and politely asked if they could share at least one fruit, since it looked extremely tasty. One of the birds tilted its head and sternly asked what he would give them in return. Akito thought this was a good sign. They were at least willing to talk. Keeping his smile, he explained that he had nothing at the moment, but promised to repay them later. Their faces immediately darkened. Such an answer did not please them. One of them sarcastically asked if maybe he would bring fruits later. Akito thought these birds had a terrible character, and that they were just mocking him. The boy realized that it was better not to joke with such creatures, because they might suddenly change their mood and simply drive him away. So he calmly closed his eyes and said that they could do whatever they wanted. He did not care. His indifference seemed to surprise them. He turned around, about to leave, when one of the birds shouted that he was a bad 2-legged and asked if he was not hungry. The boy briefly replied no and said goodbye. Then the birds began to laugh, shouting that they did not care. Let him die of hunger. They still would not share. Their cries echoed behind him. Akito sighed deeply, thinking that he had returned to the beginning again. Maybe it was worth using the food hook again. But inside, he was not ready to give up yet. Suddenly, a familiar cat voice was heard behind him. Turning around, he saw Butchie. He asked if he really came here for mangoes, and added that the boy looked very exhausted. Akito sincerely rejoiced at his appearance. He explained that when he tried to get the fruits, some cheeky birds flew in and started mocking him. Butchie immediately became alert and asked for more details. The cat nodded seriously and said that it was probably the Akri bird tribe. Hearing this, Akito asked if they also belonged to sacred creatures like cats. Butchie seriously shook his head and said that although those birds are called sacred beasts, in reality they are liars and vile creatures. Akito nodded, as if to say he understood everything, so it's better not to get involved with them. The cat asked in surprise, could it be that people do not know how to climb trees? The boy, a little embarrassed, replied that no, he is just not very skilled at it. Butch sighed indifferently and said there was nothing to be done. After that, he calmly began to take off his shoes, preparing to do what the man could not. The next moment he skillfully climbed up, his paws easily gripping the bark. The cat said he would gather some fruits for the man. Akito gratefully said that he was simply an amazing sacred beast. In a few minutes, a pile of ripe fruits lay on the ground. Akito sincerely thanked and promised to repay, to which the cat only laughed, saying that now he wants to try matangai. Akito asked what it was. Butchie explained that it was a long, thin mollusk that lives on sandy shores and rarely appears. It is difficult to catch. The boy immediately remembered that salt could help. Smiling, he said he understood everything and would try to catch a few. The cat cheerfully wagged its tail and said it would wait eagerly. Holding a bundle of mangoes, Akito decided to first take them to the camp and then go to the sea to express gratitude to the cat. Determination shone in his eyes. After he left the fruit at the camp, he set off for the shore. Examining the coast, he noticed small holes in the sand and aloud guessed that these were probably matangai burrows. Squatting down, he remembered seeing on a show that salt should be poured into such holes. It seemed logical. Then he opened the information window. The boy thought about buying salt with the remaining 2 points, but he would only get 2 kilograms. Too expensive. He did not want to spend everything, so he decided to act with makeshift means, although it annoyed him. Eventually, he came up with another plan, to make his own salt. For this, it was necessary to boil seawater, so he bought a small cauldron. Raising it above his head, he exclaimed that with its help, he would create salt from seawater. His voice sounded proud, as if he had discovered a new invention. Recalling the natural science lessons, he gathered several stones and branches, building a small fire. He formed a circle from the stones, on which he placed a small cauldron. The boy estimated that from 2 liters of seawater, he should get about 60 grams of salt. Then he leaned toward the fire and noticed that the flame was too weak. He began to blow on it, but the wind raised a cloud of ash that hit him right in the face. Blinded, he covered himself with his hands, muttering curses. Akito thought that right now, a lighter would be very useful, but it costs 1 point. Even Olivia, who loves playing with fire, would be happy with such a thing. Looking around, he took the remains of dry branches and wondered if they would be enough, because there was little fuel left. His dissatisfaction only grew. Looking at the fire that barely glowed, he thought the process would take a long time. He did not like the situation at all. He knelt down, leaned his hands on the ground, and quietly muttered that today nothing was working out for him at all. The birds above him laughed. Without a cat, there would be no mango, and now even the salt was not coming out. He guessed that Butchie was probably waiting for a reward. In his thoughts, Akito imagined his smiling face and quietly apologized to him. Then the boy suddenly opened his eyes, clenched his fists, and said aloud that he would not give up. His gaze filled with confidence, as if he had found the strength to act again. He decided that as long as the fire held, he needed to quickly go to the forest for firewood. If everything was done correctly, the salt would definitely come out. Returning, he fanned the flame, placed the cauldron with seawater on the stones, and ran for new branches. The fire crackled, and the water gradually began to boil. After some time, he looked inside and saw the water bubbling. Smiling, he thought that finally everything was working out. He said to himself that, although it took a lot of time, there is a result. The salt will come out a little, but the main thing is that he did it with his own hands. His heart was filled with pride. Akito touched the grains of salt with his finger and put them on his tongue. The taste was pure, with hints of sand, but genuine. He smiled in surprise. It turned out to be even pleasant. Then the boy sat down heavily on the ground. His body ached from fatigue, but his chest warmed with satisfaction. He had done something by himself, and for the first time in a long while felt peace. Looking at the sea shining in the rays of the setting sun, he thought that life here was not so bad after all. Maybe it was even paradise, just his own, wild one. The hunt would have to be postponed until tomorrow. When the sun had already set, Olivia returned. She looked exhausted, her face pale, her eyes barely open. She quietly said she had returned and barely managed to smile. The main character looked at her with surprise. His eyes opened wide, his mouth froze half open. He wanted to ask what had happened, because Olivia looked exhausted and nothing like herself. His gaze fell on her hair. The usual curls were gone. The hairstyle had fallen apart. He quietly asked what had happened. Her face showed that she was deeply upset. Olivia bowed her head and began to apologize in a trembling voice. The hunt was unsuccessful, and she felt guilty. Her words sounded like sincere disappointment. Akito immediately said that no apologies were needed and asked if she was not injured. But the girl covered her face with her hands, whispering that she had boasted in vain. Ultimately, she lost. She explained that she found deer tracks, but it turned out to be a sacred creature. The boy gently replied that he understood everything, as such a meeting could have been a shock. Olivia sadly said that sacred beings must not be killed. Akito agreed and said he understood her pain, but there was no need to be upset. Then he said he had something special for her. He turned around, took a mango, and handed her the fruit, saying that these were the same fruits Butchie had gathered. Olivia said doubtfully that they looked appetizing, but she was not sure. The boy smiled and said that 2 would be left for tomorrow, and the rest could be eaten today. She thanked him, and he satisfactorily noted that the fruits had ripened perfectly. Akito noticed that maybe it was unusual for her to eat so simply, without utensils, but it was normal. Then he took the mango himself and showed how to bite it properly. He bit into a juicy piece and, chewing, thought that this was the most delicious mango he had ever tasted. His eyes shone with pleasure. Olivia hesitantly looked at him, and he encouragingly said that the taste was wonderful. You just have to try it. She nodded and carefully took a small bite. Juice spread over her lips, and she suddenly smiled, saying that the fruit was truly incredibly tasty. The sensation of sweetness melted her depressed mood. She turned to him and sincerely thanked him, calling him by name for the first time that day. Her voice sounded warmer than before. Watching her, Akito thought that, although she tried to hold herself together, she was painfully grieving the loss. He wanted to cheer her up, to find something that would bring back her smile. Chewing mango, he thought that tomorrow they would try to catch matangai and replenish their energy supplies. This was his little plan for the next day. Suddenly a drop fell to the ground, then another. He raised his head and exclaimed that it was rain. In a moment, a downpour covered them both, and they hurriedly ran to the camp. Akito asked if she was okay, but Olivia said the rain was too heavy. The water painfully hit the skin, and the boy felt the cold piercing to the bone. He remembered that the fire would go out because of the rain and cursed angrily. Their camp was completely unprepared for the bad weather. The boy said he would find something to cover himself with and asked Olivia to wait a little. His voice sounded determined, despite the noise of the downpour. Opening the information window, he remembered that he had one point. He began frantically searching for the necessary item, and fortunately, found it. It turned out to be a tarp, a sturdy canvas that could be used to cover oneself from the rain. He immediately bought it and exclaimed with relief that now they were saved. While he was stretching the tent, he noticed the campfire's flame dying out, so he worked even faster, ignoring the cold. Looking at the sky, he realized that the sun was already setting. Without fire, it would soon be completely dark. And it was then that he felt something behind his back. Olivia approached him. She silently pressed against him from behind and wrapped her arms around his waist. The boy called her name in confusion, not understanding what was happening. He felt her trembling. Her hands were cold, and her body barely contained a slight shiver. Worried, he asked what had happened. They stood in the rain, motionless, like statues. The boy forgot about work for a moment, and only thought that the situation was too strange, almost fragile. Olivia still held him tightly. He called her again, but she did not answer. Her silence was even more troubling. They were both completely wet. Water was running down their shoulders. The boy turned his head and quietly said her name again. But she remained motionless. She pressed even closer to him. He felt her trembling and asked if she was all right. In his thoughts, he realized she was shivering from fear or cold. And then Olivia whispered that it was so dark around. Too dark. The boy realized that she was afraid of the dark, and this discovery really stunned him. After this, the main character finally decided to finish with the tent. Touching it, he felt that Olivia was trembling even more. He gently said that she needed to get inside before she caught a cold. The boy followed her under the shelter. He spoke calmly, repeating that everything was fine, trying to calm her trembling with his voice. He came closer, threw a towel over her head, and quietly said that he was near. His presence was meant to give her a sense of safety amid the darkness and rain. Akito thought that, although quite some time had passed, it seemed they were now safe. This feeling brought him genuine joy and relief. They sat together in the cramped tent. Olivia kept trembling the whole time, covering her face with her hands, as if she did not want him to see her tears. The boy painfully thought about how to help her. Inside, irritation boiled over at himself. He could do nothing, and she suffered beside him. Suddenly, he felt a strange change in his body, a wave of energy that passed through his entire being. He did not even understand what exactly had happened. It seemed as if the forces had suddenly increased. Opening the system window, he was surprised to see that the level had risen, and along with it, new points had appeared. After a brief review of the information, he realized that now he would get even more with each level. Returning to the girl, he smiled and said that now everything would be fine. Having reviewed the entire catalog, Akito chose a solar-powered lantern that could shine for more than a day. The price was 2 points. He immediately pressed buy. The boy apologized to Olivia for making her wait and said that now they have light. She removed her hands from her face, her cheeks reddened from his care. With a sincere smile, he said that now one can sleep peacefully, without worrying about the fire. Tears of relief mixed with gratitude flashed in the girl's eyes. Akito knelt before her, holding a lantern in his hand. Its warm light reflected in her eyes. She quietly agreed, and it was clear that this care touched her heart. A new day had come. The boy stepped out of the tent, shielding his eyes from the bright sun, and took a deep breath of fresh air. A smile shone on his face. The day promised to be good. He remembered how Olivia quickly fell asleep yesterday, sitting right on the tent floor, holding the lantern close. The light seemed to soothe her more than anything else. The boy looked at her thoughtfully and thought that maybe she had some trauma related to the dark. Her fear seemed unusual, but he dismissed these thoughts, deciding that until she told him herself, he would not touch the past. It was better to just wait and support. Imagining her smile, Akito thought he wanted to see her happy even here, on this lost island. He wanted to do everything to make her laugh again. At that moment, he opened the system window, thinking about how best to use the remaining 3 points. And suddenly, something new caught his attention, making him freeze in surprise. A skill roulette appeared before him. The system explained that for each level, you could spin it and receive a random number of points. His heart beat faster. As it turned out, after 2 days of survival, it opened automatically. A real roulette lit up before him. Without hesitation, Akito pressed the start button. He watched it spin, clenching his fists and almost whispering a prayer for luck. The wheel spun slower and slower. The boy held his breath and waited for it to stop. His face tensed with anticipation. The number 19 stopped on the screen. He raised his hand, shouted joyfully, and smiled widely. Now he had 24 points, a true achievement. To begin with, he decided to acquire the skill camp food to learn how to cook properly. This was something both of them greatly lacked. The system notified him of obtaining the status beginner professional. Akito was delighted, realizing that now he could butcher carcasses and cook real dishes. He thought that thanks to this, he would help Olivia when they hunt prey. He decided to save the remaining points. New skills would be useful later. Opening the food gacha, he decided to cook something for Olivia while she was still sleeping. Meanwhile, the fire flared up, filling the camp with warmth. The boy sincerely hoped that the girl would feel joy, at least from this breakfast. After all the fears, she deserved peace and warmth. When he was setting up the campfire, he heard her call his name. She wished him good morning, and he smiled, asking if she was all right. Olivia apologized for her appearance yesterday and for holding on to him so tightly during the rain. There was shame in her voice, but the boy only smiled gently, not letting her sink into worry again. To distract her from apologies, Akito showed a bundle of scarves and fabrics they took from the tent. He decided that this would help lift her mood because something cozy could be made from it. He explained that the fabric could absorb magical energy and start glowing. He suggested stretching it together so that nights would be calmer. Olivia blushed, feeling the care she hadn't known for a long time. But first, it was time for breakfast. The leftover mango was perfect, and from the gacha, he got a packet of instant soup that cost only 1 point. Thanks to this, other dishes could also be cooked. He also purchased a set for cooking outdoors for 3 points to make their days a little warmer. Laying out the bowls, the boy poured powder from the box into them. Olivia watched in surprise as ordinary powder turned into an aromatic dish. He explained that after boiling, it would become a real soup. He added boiling water and carefully stirred everything with a spoon. Steam rose above the bowls, filling the air with a pleasant aroma of spices and broth. After stirring a little more, he announced that the dish was ready. Olivia leaned over the bowl and said that the smell was very appetizing. She brought the spoon to her lips and swallowed the first portion. The taste turned out to be delicate and rich. The food pleased her soul. The warmth of the soup spread through her body, gradually relieving fatigue. Akito, watching her reaction, felt true satisfaction. When they finished eating, Olivia gathered her strength and offered to set up the tent herself, proving that she could help no worse than him. Her determination looked mature. Akito smiled, thinking that it was a real blessing, such a sweet and strong girl nearby. He suggested pitching the tent right here to practice. They got to work. The boy showed how to properly secure the ropes and tied knots, while she repeated his movements, trying not to fall behind. For her, it was unusual, but pleasant. For the first time, she could do something on her own, without orders, and without fear that someone would stop her. When he asked what she meant, Olivia told about the prohibitions in her home. Members of the ducal family were not allowed to do anything by themselves. Everything was done by servants. Hearing this, Akito realized that the life of the young lady was much harder than it seemed from the outside. Her path was not as carefree as he had thought. Only the last rope remained to be tightened. When she pulled it, the tent unfolded evenly, creating a perfect canopy. Olivia beamed with joy. This was the first tent she had set up by herself, and this simple moment brought her true pride. When the work was finished, the boy suggested going to the shore. It was time to gather the mollusks that Butchie had talked about. They came to the sea, and Akito decided to immediately check if the plan would work. He looked for holes in the sand, poured salt there, and soon saw a mollusk emerging from there. It remained only to prevent the prey from escaping. The boy quickly grabbed it, lifting the wet sand with his hands. He managed to catch the first metangai. Olivia watched the catch with admiration, her eyes shining with curiosity. This was what Butchie loved, a wonderful gift for help. The boy suggested she try as well, and she instantly agreed. grabbing the next mollusk with incredible speed. Excitement was evident on her face. She darted along the shore, searching for new holes, while Akito laughed and applauded her enthusiasm, feeling that this moment had restored her life energy. However, the salt quickly ran out, although there seemed to be quite a lot of it. They exchanged glances and realized they would now have to come up with something else. The boy looked at the catch and thought that this amount would be enough. Then he wanted to suggest returning, but noticed something unusual in the girl. Her movements became strangely fast. Her eyes sparkled as if she had a new excitement. Akito didn't have time to say anything before she was already acting. Olivia suddenly crouched and began to rake the sand with her hands. She exclaimed that salt was not a problem. It could be dug up just like that, and continued digging. Then, smiling, she asked Akito to evaluate her new technique. He could not hide his surprise. Only she could come up with something like that. Soon their small pot was full of mollusks. Olivia beamed with happiness looking at the catch, and Akito shared her joy, hoping that this would definitely be enough to repay for the mango. Now it was necessary to clean the mollusks from sand. Olivia volunteered to call Tomo-san and Butcher-san, and Akito decided to use the skill Previous Pro to speed up the preparation, although the process could take a long time. But the new skill exceeded all expectations. He cleaned the mollusks in an instant. The boy was delighted at how quickly it was done. He increasingly liked having such skills. Soon, Butchie and Tomo-san came to the camp. They were surprised that the boy decided to treat them to such delicious seafood and immediately became interested in the preparation. The cats sincerely rejoiced at the big catch and enthusiastically praised Akito for his skill. Their tails wagged happily, their eyes shone with pleasure, but the young man insisted that it was all thanks to Lady Olivia. Without her, he would not have managed. She only smiled shyly, lowering her gaze. Butchie thanked his younger sister for her efforts, and Tomo-san handed over a piece of butter, which he had brought especially for frying. Akito was delighted. Now he could prepare a real batayaki. The boy suggested Olivia try frying the mollusks herself. She froze in hesitation, but the cats, on the contrary, purred happily, approving the idea. The girl admitted that she had never cooked before and was afraid of ruining the dish, but Akito gently said that there was nothing difficult, just enough to fry a little. Gathering her courage, she got to work. The mollusks hissed in the pan, oil splashes flew aside, and the girl asked confusedly if everything was going as it should. The boy confirmed that it was supposed to be that way. It was time to add the butter. Olivia wanted to throw it into the pan, but Akito timely advised to just put it in. The aroma quickly filled the camp, and even the cats squinted their eyes with satisfaction. When the dish was ready, Olivia could not believe she had done it herself. Akito distributed the portions and handed the bowls to his friends. Their reaction was enthusiastic. They thanked him sincerely. Having tried the first pieces, Tomo-san and Butchie purred in unison with pleasure. They really liked the taste. Olivia asked with surprise if it was really tasty, and heard a resolute yes. Tomo-san winked at her, saying that she had a real talent. Her cheeks flushed with a blush. Akito invited her to try her own dish before it cooled down. She hesitantly took the fork and carefully bit off a piece. At that moment, her eyes filled with tears, and her fingers trembled slightly. The feeling was too strong to hide her emotions. The boy leaned toward her anxiously, asking what had happened, but she only shook her head, indicating that everything was fine. These were tears of joy. For the first time in her life, she had cooked something with her own hands, and it turned out delicious. This thought overwhelmed her with feelings. Akito sat opposite and said that while they were here, she could forget about her title and just be herself. His words sounded warmly homely. The girl looked at him in surprise, but he insisted that there wasn't one here to judge them, and he himself would not tell anyone. Her gaze softened with every word. Olivia suddenly laughed and began listing what she wanted: to cook herself, to clean, to eat to her heart's content, to laugh without limits. This freedom captivated her soul. The boy said that she had every right to live exactly like that, without fear, without prohibitions, simply happily. He added that she could do everything she wished, and smiled sincerely, watching her eyes shine again. Olivia also smiled widely, and thanked him for being there. Akito responded with the same warmth, feeling a true connection between them. In his thoughts, he noted that it was the first time he saw her so smiling. Finally, she looked truly alive. The cats, seeing Olivia's tears, became worried. They thought that she did not like the dish, or perhaps Akito had offended her, but the girl hurried to explain that these were tears of happiness. She was moved by her own culinary success. The cats sighed with relief. They purred contentedly, saying that the dish was truly wonderful, and asked to prepare a little more. Olivia gladly agreed, deciding that now she would improve her culinary skills. Her eyes shone with enthusiasm. Akito watched her with a smile, sincerely glad that she was laughing again. The cats stretched out their bowls, impatiently waiting for seconds, and from afar behind them, another sacred beast was watching. Its silhouette froze among the trees, and its gaze carefully followed this happy company. Akito, together with friends, was gathering ripe fruits. The sun was gently shining, the air was clean, and every moment seemed peaceful after all the hardships of recent days. The boy stepped out of the tent, stretched his chest fully, and sighed contentedly. The weather was wonderful, and yesterday's mollusks turned out to be surprisingly tasty. Overall, everything was going as well as possible. Then he decided to check his system glasses. After all the expenses, only 9 points remained, and he pondered how to allocate them most wisely. Opening the system window, Akito reviewed skills in camp cooking and equipment use. He figured he could spend some points to improve basic abilities, and if he acquired the equipment use skill, he could work with an axe, knife, and hammer, thus having something like a weapon. The question was only one: what exactly to choose? At that moment, footsteps were heard behind, and Olivia greeted him good morning. She was holding a teapot and a cup, saying that she had boiled the water. She suggested drinking tea instead of plain water. The boy thanked her, smiling sincerely. Seeing his thoughtful look, the girl became worried, asking if everything was all right. Akito explained that he was thinking about which weapon to master: knife, axe, or hammer, as these skills could also help in battle. He thought aloud that the battle axe looks the best. If choosing between it and the cleaver, it is better to take the one that can compensate for the weaknesses of the other. Olivia listened to him carefully and agreed. Although she could defend herself, she advised the boy to train as well to be ready for danger. A brief silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of the sea. Their gazes met for a moment, and both felt awkward. The boy decided not to continue the topic and have breakfast first. He took out bananas, understanding that, although it was light food, it would at least provide some energy. In fact, you won't get full from these fruits. Akito even lost a little weight and had to loosen his belt. But despite this, he did not lose optimism. Eventually, he decided to use the gacha for food and ingredients. Spending 1 point, he kept 8 for himself. Ordinary potatoes dropped from the system. Olivia immediately agreed to prepare them under his guidance. Akito explained in detail how to do everything: first wash, then peel and cut into 4 parts. She listened attentively and was full of determination. The lady got to work. She washed the potatoes until they shone, then carefully cut them by hand and threw them into the pan. Now all that was left was to wait until they became soft. She added a pinch of salt and some butter that Butchie had given her. The fried potatoes sizzled, filling the air with a pleasant aroma. The dish looked simple, but appetizing. The boy took a fork, picked up a piece, and tasted it. The flavor was wonderful, tender inside and crispy outside. He couldn't hold back a smile. Olivia also tried and seemed to be satisfied. Soon, both bowls were empty. Akito leaned back, relaxed, holding his stomach from fullness, but admitted that he was somewhat dreaming of meat or fish. The girl confidently stated that she would take care of this matter. By evening, there would definitely be a meat dish on the table. Without wasting time, Olivia set off to carry out her mission. The boy only asked her to be careful, watching as she walked away with a determined look. Akito decided not to sit idle either and tried to catch some fish. He wanted to replenish their protein supply, as both would need strength. On the shore, he saw crabs and small fish. Standing with a pot ready, the boy watched carefully. He became curious whether these creatures were edible, so he thought that the skill of determining edibility would be very useful. Opening the system window, he reviewed the sequence of skills. There were many unresolved questions. He wanted to raise his immunity, but suddenly heard a strange click behind him. Turning around, the boy froze. In front of him stood a strange creature resembling a sea lion, only dressed. It seemed to be a sacred beast. Akito pondered whether it was worth risking and talking to it, but memories of past encounters with animals made him hesitate. Despite doubts, he gathered courage, raised his hand, and greeted. The sea lion calmly turned its head toward him and looked with an indifferent expression, and then simply turned away. The boy felt a wave of indignation. He was ignored. Maybe he said something wrong or accidentally scared the beast, but the beast still responded. It asked what the person wanted. Akito was glad that at least the dialogue had started. That was already a success. The boy gave his full name, Machida Akihito, and explained that he had recently arrived on Marvel Island. He wanted to ask the sacred beast one question. Pointing to the fish and crabs, Akito asked if they could be eaten. He was eager to find out how safe it was, so as not to risk either himself or Olivia. The sacred beast replied that this fish was not very tasty. Akito understood everything, although the sharp tone slightly confused him. It seemed to him that the beast was speaking with displeasure. The boy thanked for the hint, adding that even such a fish would suit him. The animal asked in surprise if he really intended to eat it. Akito sincerely explained that lately there had been almost no food, and he just wanted to satisfy his hunger. The sacred beast looked at him thoughtfully. Then, without a word, it dived into the water. Akito decided that the beast probably did not like people. In any case, he had to catch at least something, so he returned to his task. 10 minutes passed before he managed to catch a tiny fish. Despite this, the boy was happy, at least some catch. However, catching by hand was too long and exhausting. Akito thought it would be good to have a fishing rod to ease the work. And just then, when he was thinking about tackle, a bunch of large fish suddenly appeared on the shore, shining in the sun. The boy approached and examined the catch. The fish was huge, resembling mackerel or even zander. From surprise, he could not believe his own eyes. Near the water, he noticed a crest exactly like that of the sacred beast he had seen earlier. And even the voice that sounded from the waves seemed familiar. Akito loudly thanked towards the sea, expressing gratitude for the help. His voice echoed, blending with the sound of the surf. He wondered if the beast heard his words, since it was probably the one who had provided this catch. Such kindness did not go unnoticed. The boy wanted to thank properly, but hesitated, so as not to disturb. Besides, the fish needed to be used quickly while it was fresh. Thinking that happiness should be shared, he decided to treat his friends and set off from the shore back to the camp. By the campfire, his friends were just busy with preparations. Seeing Akito, they rejoiced and immediately sniffed the air. Butcher-san caught the smell of fresh fish coming from him and exclaimed excitedly that the aroma was simply incredible. The boy showed them a full pot of catch. He had caught a lot of fresh fish and decided to treat everyone. The cats even jumped for joy. They praised him, calling him a true fisherman. But Akito, scratching the back of his head, awkwardly explained that this catch was most likely given to him by a sacred beast, on whose head was a shell. The friends immediately understood who he meant, and told him that it was the work of anicap, a special kind of creatures that wear comb-like shells on themselves. The boy was surprised to hear that they were considered only semi-sacred. For the anicans, a helmet or shell was very important, and those who did not find their own wore shells as a substitute. Akito recalled the image of the beast and realized that they really differ from others. But he was more worried about something else, whether these creatures despise humans. Butchie explained that this is a race of contradictory beings, full of internal conflicts and fears that often prevent them from living in harmony. The boy felt that something was hidden in these words and asked what exactly his interlocutor meant. Butchie said that among the anicaps there are many sincere beings who seek friendship but are afraid to make the first move. Sometimes they are too shy even to speak with people. There are also those who love fried fish, but at the same time fear fire. Akito realized how strange their contradictions were and felt some pity for them. He was surprised to hear that such strong beings often complain of shoulder pain. He did not understand what this was about, but decided not to ask again. At the end of the conversation, Butchie only asked to be more lenient with Asi-kan if he ever met them again. Akito started preparing dinner. He used the universal sento knife, preparing the fish with the help of magic. Now it remained to cook it while it was fresh. He decided to fry the small fish on the coals and make soup from the large one. Butchie brought him an onion to add aroma. The boy was so absorbed in the process that when Olivia appeared nearby, he almost dropped the knife. She had returned for a break, attracted by the smell of fried fish. Akito realized that her hunt probably failed, but said nothing. Instead, he showed her the fish on the skewer, sizzling appetizingly over the fire. The girl asked in surprise if he had caught it himself. The boy replied that no. The catch was given to him as a gift, but promised to tell all the details during dinner while the dish was still hot. The boy told his friends how the sacred beast Asakan gave him the fish. He wanted to thank it for the help, but the creature disappeared somewhere without leaving a trace. Olivia was surprised by his story. It was hard for her to imagine how such a strange encounter could really happen. Akito did not know that this species is extremely sensitive to emotions. He wanted to befriend Asakan, but perhaps he spoke too harshly, causing anxiety in the beast. Olivia reassured him, saying that nothing terrible had happened. Everything could still be fixed. She sincerely believed that over time, they would find common ground. The girl confidently said that Akito was so kind-hearted that he would easily win anyone's sympathy. For her, it was obvious. The boy was confused by such sincere support. Her words touched his heart. He was pleased to hear such trust and warmth that came from the very soul. Thanking him, he decided to visit the sea again soon, hoping to meet Asakan once more and properly express his gratitude. Olivia wished him luck in seeing the beast again. Akito was glad that there was such harmony between them, although he felt a slight sadness thinking about their upcoming separation. After all, when the next ship arrives, Olivia will surely leave the island, returning to her former life. This thought weighed on him. He could not imagine how he would say goodbye to her after all they had been through together. The day of their parting was already near. Akito thought about it with a heavy heart, trying not to show his sadness. At farewell, Olivia thanked him for the fried fish and promised to continue hunting, and he asked her above all to take care of herself. She smiled in response and told him not to take unnecessary risks either, adding that next time she would be the first to return with the catch. Both understood that the main thing now was to survive. The rest could wait. Recalling Butchie's words that Asakans love fried fish, the boy noticed he had one piece left. He decided to take it with him. He wanted to go to the sea again and sincerely thank his savior for his kindness. This desire would not let him rest, and indeed, the sacred beast was in the same place. It stood proudly by the water, looking into the distance as if guarding the sea. Akito did not expect such luck. The main thing now was not to scare Asakan. The boy cautiously greeted it, not approaching too closely. Hearing the sound, the beast was already about to dive, but the boy hurriedly explained that he had prepared fried fish as a token of gratitude for yesterday's gift. Akito covered his mouth with his palm, realizing he was speaking too loudly. He immediately apologized so as not to scare the beast and continued to tell how he tried to make the dish tasty. Asakan turned his head toward the sea, and the boy's heart tightened with anxiety. But eventually, the beast said that he liked the fish. Relief filled Akito's soul. He placed the bowl on the ground, inviting to taste. He said that he himself had already tried it, and the dish turned out wonderful. The beast cautiously approached and began to examine the contents. Then he took the bowl, turned away, and began to eat. The boy watched this with pleasure, as if witnessing a true miracle. When the silence slightly melted away, Akito asked what his name was. The sacred beast answered without hesitation that his name was Toby. The boy sincerely rejoiced, thanking the new acquaintance for his trust. Toby glanced at him over his shoulder and silently turned away again. But for Akito, even this was a victory. He understood that before him was a good beast who had come to help him in a difficult moment. Sitting nearby, the boy patiently waited while Toby finished eating. He was overwhelmed with the desire to give even more in return, to do something useful. Suddenly, something dark began to emerge from the depths of the sea. A large shadow quickly approached the shore, raising waves. In a few seconds, the creature jumped out of the water right in front of them. Its movement was swift and threatening. Splashes flew in all directions, but at the last moment, Toby decisively leapt forward and covered the boy with his body, protecting him from the wave's blow and the attacker. The hero rubbed his eyes, not understanding what had just happened. He was stunned by Toby's action, as seaweed was tangled on the beast's head. Akito anxiously asked if he was all right. He shook the seaweed off his head along with the shell that had slipped, then quickly put it back in place, as if that shell had special meaning for him. Nearby in the water, 2 orcas were laughing merrily, watching everything as if it were a show. Akito heard their laughter and felt mockery in it. This only confirmed his suspicion that they were mocking Toby. The boy did not understand why they behaved that way. Toby asked him to move away from the edge because it was dangerous, explaining that orcas like to cause trouble. Although Akito still did not grasp the reason, one of the orcas said that all this was Toby's own fault, because he was still inexperienced and too trusting. The sacred beast suddenly plunged into the water. Akito only managed to think that this gentle but proud creature feels. He looked for a long time at the waves left after his friend's dive, and worried whether he was all right. It seemed Toby would not return to the shore soon. In his memory, the moment resurfaced when the orca jumped out in front of them, and Toby shielded him with his body. Now the boy wanted even more to thank him for the rescue, feeling that the beast was upset by his careless words. He stayed to wait a little longer, hoping that Toby would return, although maybe it was worth changing the place. In the underwater world, many wonders occur, and the boy thought about how he could help his friend with at least something. Meanwhile, Toby himself was swimming deep underwater, trying to break away from the persistent orcas that were chasing him. Akito continued calling him, standing by the shore, but underwater the pursuers had almost caught the beast. The boy anxiously watched the sea surface. You managed to break away from the chase, disappearing among the coral reefs. His silhouette vanished into the depths, leaving behind only a faint silvery shimmer. The boy decided to look for a friend in another place. He walked along the shore to where he had not been before. The hope for a new meeting melted with every step, and suddenly, in the distance, he saw a familiar figure sitting on a rock. His heart pounded. It seemed to him that it was Toby, but approaching, he saw a completely different creature, resembling a cat, but with huge fangs and 3 horns on its head. It was a monster. The boy realized he was in trouble, and Olivia was not nearby to help. Moreover, he was unarmed. He hesitated so long choosing a weapon, and in the end, took nothing. The monster reacted first. It lunged at him with a roar. The boy flew back and fell to the ground. The situation was becoming critical. Olivia said it was a weak monster, but looking at its teeth, it was hard to believe. Akito ran away, not believing that all this was really happening. The monster was rapidly catching up. He understood that soon its jaws would close right on him. In despair, he called up the system window, trying to find any weapon in the inventory. The monster was already very close, having opened its jaws and preparing to leap. At this decisive moment, a large battle axe appeared in the boy's hands, and he began to fight back with all his might. The creature retreated fearfully, wheezed, and jumped back into the thicket. The boy hoped that he had managed to drive it away at least for some time. Exhaling, he sank to the ground. There was no victory, But even such a result seemed like a relief. He remembered how easily Olivia deals with such monsters. Admiration for her strength and confidence awakened in his soul. The boy decided that he would ask the girl to train him. No matter how many skills he acquired, surviving without real practice would be difficult. Toby looked out from the sea surface and saw Akito sitting on the shore, holding an axe. His gaze was calm, but his eyes shone with fatigue. The boy heard a splash, and turning around, noticed the familiar beast rising from the water. Joy flared up in his heart. He did not hide his admiration. He had finally found a friend, whose meeting he had so longed for. Toby was surprised that he was truly awaited. Coming ashore, the beast asked if Akito was injured. His voice sounded calm, but there was care in it. The boy realized that Toby had seen that fight with the monster. It was unexpected, and he felt embarrassed by his own weakness. Toby looked worried and seemed to feel guilty for not helping back then, but the hero only thanked for the care and immediately asked if the beast itself was unharmed after the encounter with those orcas. Toby calmly replied that everything was fine. Then he remembered that Akito wanted to talk to him. The boy explained that he just wanted to thank him. After all, it was Toby who saved him. He sincerely expressed words of gratitude. The beast was silent, then remembered the fried fish he received from the boy. He told you that the dish was extremely delicious, and now he himself wants to thank his friend. Akito smiled and replied that there was no need to thank for such a trifle. For him, it was just a sign of friendship. Then he jokingly asked if Toby would like some more fish if he cooked it. But the question turned out to be unnecessary. The beast was already satisfied. The boy moved on to another, more personal question. He had long been curious why other sea dwellers did not take the young Asicans seriously. He replied to you that he once called himself a yellow beak, all because of the hat in the Asican tribe. It is a sacred symbol of adulthood that must be found in the sea. He who finds his own hat is considered an adult, but children swim poorly and rarely get it. Therefore, until they find the real one, they wear a shell as a substitute. He sadly admitted to you that he still wears a shell, so for his tribe he is still a green newcomer. Others already have their hats, and he keeps justifying that he is still searching. He swims longer than anyone, tirelessly exploring the depths, but there are no results. He told you about it with sadness, and even Akito felt sincere sympathy for his friend, who so much sought recognition. The boy said that Toby did everything possible, so he should not blame himself. Sometimes it's just a lack of luck, not effort. He called Toby a true hard worker and kind-hearted, adding that only those two orcas who bullied him were to blame. The beast listened silently, then firmly promised that if he met those troublemakers again, he would definitely tell them everything he thought. Akito didn't even know how to react to such determination. He saw sincere longing in his eyes. It seemed that the hat had a deep meaning for the Asicans, and the boy wondered how he could help. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. Akito asked what kind of hat Toby would like to have if he could choose any. After thinking a little, he replied that a straw hat would look wonderful. The hero opened the inventory, began searching for something similar, and finally found the needed item. In his hands appeared a neat straw hat with narrow brims. Akito handed it to his friend, saying he wanted to give this hat as a thank you for saving his life and for his sincerity. Toby's eyes shone with surprise. He couldn't believe that this gift was really for him. The boy aloud named the item his new name, Toby's hat, and they both agreed that it suited him. The beast took off the shell and put on the gift. In the new look, Toby looked different, mature and confident. Akito admired him with a warm smile. Toby lowered his head, covering his eyes with the edge of the hat, and quietly thanked him. His voice trembled with sincerity. The boy felt his heart fill with peace and pride for this friendship. The hero wanted to chat a little more, just like that, calmly, enjoying the peaceful day and the silence around. At the same time, two birds with stern faces were watching him and Toby from afar, without making a sound. In the camp, Akito was chopping wood. Thanks to the new skill of using camping equipment, he already felt his muscles well when working with the axe. He managed to acquire a real weapon, and now it remained only to learn something like boosting immunity or determining edibility. After the encounter with the monster and Toby's gift, the hero calculated the expenses. Potato from Gotcha, knife -1 point, equipment, skill 4, axe 2, and the straw hat took the last one. He was not very pleased with the 0-point balance, but the level could be raised, and along with it, the opportunity to earn new ones. So, Akito decided to spin the roulette again, and waited anxiously for new points to appear on the screen. It was then that Olivia appeared to greet him. She stumbled and flew straight onto the boy. Falling, he instinctively pressed the stop button, and the girl ended up on top, apologizing, and the situation looked quite ambiguous. They quickly jumped away from each other, both blushing. Olivia was embarrassed, and the boy, to lighten the mood, pressed the roulette again, and unexpectedly won 36 points. It was the maximum, moreover. The system added 5 daily points. Together, 41. Akito could not contain his joy, and thanked Olivia for the lucky coincidence. Without wasting time, he began to distribute the earned points. 6 for immunity, 2 for first aid knowledge, 3 for self-healing, 7 for the basics of healing magic. The next goal was a universal knife for butchering game, necessary for a professional butcher. The boy proudly showed the purchase to Olivia, but the girl doubted whether it was safe to flaunt it, watching how the blade gleamed. While she was examining it, it was time for breakfast. Akito noticed the sharpness of the blade, nodded with satisfaction, and opened the menu, as there were plenty of points left. He spun the food gotcha twice. The first drop was a double sandwich. Simple but appetizing. Olivia tried a piece and approved the taste. The hero was glad he got lucky and decided to share. In the second case, he received a small glass. Inside was cream. The girl raised her eyebrows in surprise and asked if there might also be ice cream, as she loved sweets. However, she couldn't eat much, and if left for later, the dish would melt. Then Akito suggested sharing it with Mignon, but on the way, it might melt again. The day promised to be hot, so Olivia sighed that it would be good to have ice magic. The boy smiled and opened the system window, saying he already had a solution. He showed her a refrigeration box for 2 points, capable of keeping cold for 3 days, and a magical cooling element for 1 point. If filled with energy, it immediately freezes items to -15 degrees. 13 points remained. Akito asked Olivia to pour some of her magic, as her reserve was larger. The girl gladly agreed. She liked this game with household wonders. Together, they went to Buchi-san. The cat was delighted to see acquaintances and immediately became interested in the box in the boy's hands. The friends looked at the strange object in surprise, asking what this thing was. Akito, smiling contentedly, said that there were many tasty things there, and he couldn't eat it all himself, so he came to share. No sooner had he uttered the word tasty than a whole crowd of cats gathered around. Their eyes lit up with eager excitement. The hero solemnly opened the box and invited everyone to try. Inside, to the surprise of those present, was ice cream. The residents surrounded the refrigerator. To them, it looked like a white lump, incomprehensible and suspicious. Was it really food? Olivia noticed the confusion. It seemed that no one on the island had ever seen anything like it. She offered Buchi-san to be the first to taste it. He carefully scooped with a spoon, put it in his mouth, and was surprised. The cold bit his tongue. Akito thought that maybe cats did not like icy food. Having tried only a little, Buchi unexpectedly lit up with delight. The dessert turned out to be tender and sweet, like a piece of cloud, and the cat solemnly declared that it was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted. After that, he said that he had completely changed his opinion about the hero. Akito was glad, although he thought that probably everyone had previously considered him a hopeless loser. The rest of the cats immediately surrounded Olivia, trying to get their share, and she, laughing, asked everyone to line up. The girl smiled joyfully, distributing the dessert. For her, it was something new, to distribute food among a crowd of grateful animals. The hero looked at her tenderly, understanding that she was happy. Noticing his gaze, Olivia blushed and asked him not to stare, but to serve the ice cream faster. The boy was confused and began to hastily apologize amid the cheerful laughter of friends. Everyone finally got their portions and began to enjoy the taste, wishing each other a pleasant appetite. Joyful chatter filled the entire village. They tasted something so wonderful for the first time that some even jumped for joy. Some said they wanted to eat it every day because it supposedly gave them strength. The hero apologized, explaining that the ice cream fell to him by accident and he could not make more yet. But the residents were already proclaiming him a culinary god. Some even came up with the idea of erecting a bronze statue in his honor. Akito refused in horror, while Olivia, holding back laughter, imagined a monument with an ice cream cone in hand. The boy explained that there is nothing divine about it, because ice cream can be made from eggs and milk. He even mentioned that there is a special machine for this. Tomakun's mouth watered with impatience. Cow milk could be found, but goat milk was not yet available, so the main problem remained eggs. Butch pondered and suggested that it might be possible to try to take eggs from birds, perhaps from the very same beast that lives nearby. Akito thought they were talking about alpacas, but the cat sharply objected. Holy creatures are untouchable. Their eggs are forbidden to touch. The hero became embarrassed. There were no chickens on the island, and he was already beginning to worry about where to get what was needed. Then Butchie seriously suggested Ruka's eggs. The hand turned out to be a giant bird 12 meters long, and the boy instantly went pale. The cat calmly added that its nest was only 10 kilometers from here, on the cliff. Akito could not imagine how to obtain the eggs of such a monster, but the residents had a simple plan, just to steal them. He was even more struck by the fact that everyone on the island readily agreed to this risk for the sake of ice cream. The hero tried to persuade everyone to wait at least a day, but in response heard wild suggestions to even catch the hand itself. Olivia recalled that the meat of this bird was very tasty. After the word tasty, the cats immediately picked up her idea. She also said that rock birds often attack people and steal grain, so the hunt would even be useful. The residents began to praise the girl and were already planning to erect a monument to her next to Akito. It was decided to set off immediately. The team consisted of the hero himself, Olivia, Butchie, and Tama. Akito only sighed, realizing that he himself had caused this madness. But he hoped that everything would end successfully. He took an axe, a universal knife, several items given by the residents, and opened the skill menu to prepare a little more. The hero learned the skill of determining edibility, spending 3 points, as it could come in handy on the road. He invested the remaining points in beginner-level movement magic for 8 points. Now, only 2 remained. Butchie, Olivia, and Tama approached him, informing that everything was ready, and they could set off. They were moving through dense thickets. The cat noticed that the forest was becoming denser, and asked Tama to watch his paws. He indignantly replied that he was careful even without reminders, but at that moment, something caught his leg. Tama screamed and flew into the air, flapping his paws. He helplessly hung upside down in a trap, begging his friends to free him quickly, while Olivia anxiously tried to understand if something worse had happened. Olivia understood that she needed to cut the rope, but Butchie warned her about possible other traps nearby. Caution was now the main rule. Suddenly, Akito had an idea. He approached the tree, gripping the knife and trying to calm his breath. Seeing exactly where the rope passed, he declared that he knew how to act, although it was risky. The hero activated the pre-processing skill. The blade flashed, and with a dry sound, the rope snapped. Operation completed. The cat, with a loud scream, fell down and flew straight to the ground, flailing its paws. Akito didn't even have time to blink when Olivia rushed forward and caught her companion right in the air. Tama, still trembling, thanked for the rescue. Olivia looked at Akito in surprise. When did he manage to wield the blade so skillfully? The boy explained that it was not a sword, but the skill of a professional cutter. At that moment, a scream came from the bushes. Many beaks poked out from there. The birds were clamoring, accusing the people of intending to cut Minyan, who seemed not to understand what was happening. The hero began to be annoyed by their noisy screeching. They poked him with their wings and shouted that he must be crazy if he wanted to eat his own companion. Minion, with tears in his eyes, asked if it was true, but Akito hurried to calm him down, explaining that he was just disarming a trap with a skill. The birds, circling above them, continued to stir up the situation. There was no trust left for the hero, although Butchie himself remained calm, showing that it was not worth reacting. The cat quietly told Akito not to pay attention to the chatter. Ahead, a stone ledge was already visible, and they needed to focus. The birds watched them with offense. Climbing higher, the boy asked Olivia if everything was all right. She smiled and replied that it was just noise, and that he himself should be more attentive. Meanwhile, the birds became extremely angry. Their pride could not bear being simply ignored. They declared an attack and began throwing fruits down, promising that travelers would have no mercy. Friends ducked down, covering their heads, while Olivia shouted for everyone to hide under the tree. Akito activated the skill of property identification. The first to be identified was a chestnut edible, but with a hard shell. Then mango, oranges, and dozens more fruits followed. The boy quickly cleaned what could be eaten, gathered everything together, and left the inedible shell as a souvenir. His friends happily looked at the shiny, fresh fruits. The birds froze in amazement. Instead of fear, the people simply gathered their ammunition for lunch. The hero glanced up in surprise. The skill suddenly reacted to the birds themselves. A message appeared in the system window, stating that the species, El Bato, is conditionally edible. Hearing this, the feathered ones scattered in panic, realizing that they themselves had become prey. Friends laughed, praising Akito for his wit, but he awkwardly excused himself, saying he was joking. Yet the birds had already vanished in the sky. Olivia also praised him, admitting that even the skill of peeling the skin can prove to be life-saving. But suddenly the ground beneath his feet shook. The boy froze for a moment, thinking an earthquake had started. Butchie looked up and turned pale. On the top of the cliff, like a stone shadow, sat the gigantic hand. The bird spread its wings, and with a rumble flew down, raising the wind that bent the grass. The team froze in horror, watching as the giant creature descended nearby. Its wings darkened the sun, but the worst was yet to come. Several more such creatures appeared in the sky. Akito shouted to run, and the whole group rushed to shelter. One of the birds noticed Mignon and sharply dived, spreading its claws. The boy shouted, ordering everyone to scatter. Tama, losing balance, had already resigned to becoming prey. But Butchie managed to show a gap between the stones where they could hide. The cat barely managed to jump into the shelter. The rest pressed against the rock, watching as the giant wings cut through the air, and the shadow of Ruka circled above them, searching for a new victim. Akito barely kept his balance, but still had to fall to avoid the claw strike. The huge wing flew just above him, raising a cloud of dust. Olivia, looking around fearfully, shouted if he was okay. But the bird was too large, and even its breath nearby felt like the breath of a storm. The friends did not wait for a second attack and hurriedly began to descend from the cliff. There was no other choice. It was cramped between the trees. Butchie barely squeezed through, muttering something dissatisfied under his breath. Akito and Olivia stopped, watching the nest from above. The boy did not expect there to be 3 giant birds at once. They needed to quickly come up with a plan. The girl pondered. Without a sword, she could only handle one animal, and even then with difficulty. But even that already seemed quite a feat. Butchie soberly noted that a direct fight with 3 monsters is suicide. If lucky to lure out at least one, then one can try to steal the egg. Olivia suggested distracting them herself, but Akito objected. They came for the eggs, not for meat, and cannot risk life unnecessarily. Kit agreed with his words. First of all, to extract the eggs without attracting attention, and only then retreat. Humans are too noticeable, so better to act stealthily. Butchie and Tama had an excellent sense of space, so they could easily hide among the rocks, while others distracted the enemies. Olivia reminded that she has a new teleportation skill. She can return herself and one more person to the camp, but not the whole group. Butchie asked to entrust the plan to him specifically, as he had thought everything through. The hero nodded, agreeing to listen. Kit began explaining the first stage. At that time, 3 birds stood over the nest, watching any movement threateningly. One of them suddenly flew up, reacting to movement below. The other 2 turned their heads with curiosity. Something flashed below. It was fruit. The birds grabbed them with their beaks, tried the taste. Butchie nodded approvingly. The bait worked. The main thing now is to feed gradually and lead the predators away. Step by step, they led the birds away from the nest. Everything went according to plan. Now it was Akito's turn. The boy crawled to the nest. Inside lay 2 giant eggs, smooth like stones. He acted as carefully as possible so as not to scare the rest of the birds. Grabbed one and was about to run when he realized it was too heavy. The weight turned out to be staggering. The egg was so massive that even holding it in hand seemed like a trial. Olivia noticed his hesitation and peeked into the nest. Akito awkwardly explained that he did not expect such a heavy trophy. Having listened to him, the girl took the egg without hesitation herself. She strengthened her body with magic, and the plan was to switch places. But stepping aside, she accidentally stepped on a dry branch. A sharp crack pierced the silence, and one of the birds immediately noticed the thieves. Akito shouted to Olivia to duck, preparing for the strike. The bird fell right on them, trying to crush with its claw. The boy raised his axe, feeling a wave of strength pass through his body. He barely held under the pressure. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced his arm. A nail cracked. The boy gritted his teeth, realizing he could not be distracted. But the precious moment was already lost. Olivia was holding the egg, so the hero decided to fight to the end. He rushed at the bird with all his might, aiming for only one thing: to buy time. In his thoughts, there was only the desire for everyone to return home alive. Meanwhile, another bird took off, aiming straight at them. Butchie saw that Akito was exhausted and understood that immediate action was necessary. The cat called to move to the second plan. Now their task was to save the egg and escape. Akito looked back at Olivia. She was already prepared. The girl lifted the egg and threw it straight in the direction of the birds, trying to distract them, but missed. She stretched out her hand to catch Akito, who was already falling backward, escaping the wing strike. Taking one egg, Olivia activated the instant teleportation skill, and the space around flashed with a soft glow. In a moment, they found themselves in the camp, leaving behind the roar of wings and the chaos of battle. The girl could not believe that she had really returned. Akito, however, landed not very successfully and thought that he should have worn something lighter for such flights. They grabbed each other's hands, filled with emotions. Olivia thought he was incredible, and he believed it was all thanks to her. Then both simultaneously noticed how close they were standing and awkwardly let go of their palms. Olivia blushed and shyly apologized. The boy replied confusedly that he himself should have been more careful. In the foreground, they were supposed to return together. In the background, to meet in the village of Minyan in case of danger. So the girl decided to take the egg there to check how things were. The hero just looked at her in surprise, amazed at how easily she held this trophy. They set off along the forest path to the village, worrying whether Butchie and Tama had returned. Olivia knew the island well, so Akito trusted every step she took. In the village, Butchie and Tama were already waiting for them. Seeing their friends alive, the cats joyfully jumped up and waved their paws. They hugged, and when everyone noticed the giant egg in Olivia's hands, admiration erupted with new shouts. Having made sure all targets were met, Akito asked Butch what his secret plan was. The cat proudly told how he and Tama ran away, risking their skins for the sake of that very ice cream. Thanks to the promise of sweets, Tama even became brave. And while Ruka chased the people, they quietly got away. That was the trick. The next day, Akito spent 5 points to buy an ice cream maker. 2 remained, but after a day, the system added 5 more, and he again had 7 points. The cats, shining with impatience, began to ask if it was even possible to make ice cream from this giant egg. The recipe said, mix goat milk, egg yolks of rookie, and a little sugar. It sounded risky but appetizing. Akito and Olivia prepared the ingredients, and then the girl filled everything with the magic of cold. Her fingers glowed with a gentle blue light. All that was left was to close the lid and roll the ball. The residents of Minyan eagerly began rolling it in different directions, laughing and shouting with joy. Olivia watched this scene with emotion. Soon the dessert was ready. It was served in bowls, and the air filled with the aroma of sweet coolness. Butchie, Tama, and others tried it first, and almost jumped with delight. The taste was rich, creamy, with a light hint of mango. After that, their desire to erect a monument to Akito grew even stronger. They were already discussing whether to make it from bronze or marble. Olivia thanked the boy, and he asked in surprise why. She replied that it was for the bravery he showed in obtaining the egg, even if he himself thought he was just wildly swinging the axe. To her, he was a true hero. Genuine respect shone in her eyes, causing Akito to look away in confusion. He blushed awkwardly, not expecting such words. But Olivia sighed, since they still hadn't gotten any meat. Hearing this, Butchie raised his paw and suggested going to a nearby cave. He said there were many treats inside. The cave was a legendary place, full of strange creatures, precious crystals, and rare ingredients. Just what was needed for a new recipe. Akito opened his mouth to object, but Olivia just smiled and nodded. They understood each other without words. Everyone unanimously decided to set off for the mysterious cave, filled with determination to find meat there, and possibly another adventure.